Welcome to Island Talk Story. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, 2026, and we're doing a deep dive into Glenn Teves' memoir, Playing in the Rain.
Yeah, it was just a fascinating read.
It really is. I mean, it's this incredibly firsthand account of a completely lost era of Hawaiian ranching, and we're looking at how this family managed to run a massive, muddy, barefoot cattle ranch right in the middle of a rapidly modernizing city.
Oh, hey.
And what their survival kind of tells us about adapting to our environment instead of, fighting it.
Well, and to really understand this world, we kind of have to start with the daily reality of that life. I mean, it wasn't glamorous.
No, definitely not.
Let's look at the morning routine,
Yeah.
and it's all centered around this one cow named Nelly Belle.
Yeah, Nelly Belle. The imagery he paints right at the start, it just sets the stakes immediately. Picture this. So it's before 7 in the morning, and young Glenn is wrestling on these heavy knee-high rubber boots just to trudge out into this like really treacherous thick mud to fetch Nelly Belle.
Right, because she dictated the whole rhythm of his life, basically.
Exactly. And it wasn't just walking her back to the barn. When they actually got down to the milking process, Glenn had this highly specific, very messy job.
Oh, yeah.
He had to stand there and physically hold Nelly Belle's heavy mudcake tail.
Which just sounds awful.
It does. But if he let go, she would swat his father right in the face with like a pound of wet dirt while his dad was trying to milk her.
It really just immediately forces us to confront the physical environment of this story, because the mud is just a constant dominating presence in the whole memoir.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
We're talking about the Mānoa Valley, but a version of it that stands in just stark contrast to what we see today.
Right. The paradox of that location is so fascinating to me because today, we know the valley is this highly developed, paved, academic and residential hub. But the Teves family was running a full-scale agricultural operation right in the middle of it. And they kept this going all the way to the late 1970s.
Which is wild when you think about the timeline.
It really is. It raises a massive logistical question for me.
Yeah.
Like, with the city literally closing in all around them.
Yeah.
How did they legally and functionally just sustain a ranch?
Well, it came down to a specific legal mechanism regarding pre-existing use. So as this aggressive urbanization swept across the island, there was this widespread loss of agricultural zoning.
Right.
The landscape was being rapidly converted, just paved over. However, because the family had been operating this ranch long before those new zoning laws were actually drafted, they were essentially grandfathered in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they were granted this legal shield, basically, that allowed them to continue their established agricultural practices, even as the concrete crept up right to their property lines.
That's so interesting. And the scale of their operation, I mean, it's substantial. It wasn't just a couple of cows. The patriarch who was steering this entire enterprise was grandfather Antone Teves.
Yeah.
And he originally came from Ahuroa on the Big Island. He was one of 11 children, pure Portuguese by heritage.
Yeah.
But he possessed this specific skill that made him a really formidable businessman.
He spoke fluent Hawaiian and Japanese.
Yes.
Which in the mid-century Hawaiian economy, that linguistic ability was a massive advantage.
I'll bet.
You had first-generation Japanese immigrants running local markets, and native Hawaiian families deeply tied to the land and the local trade networks.
Yeah.
So being able to negotiate and build trust, communicate directly across those different cultural groups, it meant he could navigate the livestock trade in a way that monolingual ranchers simply couldn't.
Wow. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And he utilized every bit of that advantage, too, because they were managing a serious herd. They had up to 20 head of cattle grazing on these huge, massive, empty fields in the valley. And just to give our listeners a sense of place, those specific fields are exactly where the University of Hawaii faculty housing stands today.
Right. Right. And managing cattle in that specific location presented a really unique challenge.
How so?
Well, these animals weren't roaming free over, miles of open range. They were tethered.
Oh, right. Okay.
So that meant the cattle couldn't just wander off and seek out their own water sources. Every single drop of hydration had to be delivered to them manually.
Oh, man. The physical toll of that chore is just staggering to think about.
It's brutal.
I mean, try to imagine asking a 10-year-old today to do this before they even leave for school. The kids would load up grandfather's Jeep with these 10-gallon metal milk containers.
Oh, yeah, those things are not light.
No, not at all. A gallon of water weighs over 8 pounds. So you have children hauling basically 80-pound metal containers filled to the brim with water. carrying them across muddy terrain to 20 tethered cows every single day.
It was grueling labor, but the geography made it exponentially harder.
Yeah.
The area they were utilizing was essentially an old wetland. It was dotted with these abandoned kalo patches. And kalo or taro is a root vegetable that requires heavily saturated, flooded terraces to grow. So the land was shaped to hold water.
Right.
In fact, one of the streets in that area is named Kaloalu Iki, which translates to small deformed taro.
Wow. The name itself kind of implies that the land was struggling, right?
Precisely. The area suffered from really poor water circulation. So instead of a healthy, flowing wetland, it became this landscape of deep, stagnant mud, particularly down near the Mānoa stream.
Right.
It was notoriously treacherous terrain. Animals could easily just lose their footing, get stuck, or suffer serious injuries. The environment just demanded a very specific type of resilience.
And Grandfather Antone, he seemed deeply aware of how unique their situation was.
Yeah.
There's this moment in the memoir that I think perfectly captures this intersection of the muddy past and the paved future.
Or the Jeep ride.
Yes. Grandfather takes 6 of the boys in his Jeep, driving past these muddy pastures that are now mailway, fully modernized and integrated into the campus.
Right.
And he points out to the fields and he predicts, he says, one day some of you will be attending this university.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn and his brother Tubby actually eventually did.
Which is amazing.
It is. You have these kids just covered in mud, hauling water, standing on the very soil that would later become the foundation of their higher education.
It is a really striking image. And Grandfather Antone's foresight wasn't limited to just his grandchildren's education, you know?
Yeah.
He applied that same sharp observation to his business,
Yeah.
recognizing that the treacherous mud near the Mānoa stream was just too difficult for standard livestock. He realized he needed animals adapted to that specific friction.
Right.
So he scaled his operations into the inter-island livestock trade, focusing heavily on Molokaʻi ponies.
Because standard horses just couldn't hack it in that valley.
Yeah.
So he starts bringing in shipments of these Molokaʻi ponies, and they were absolute powerhouses designed for rough terrain.
They were uniquely built for it. They were very compact, generally measuring under 13 hands high. And for context, a hand is a 4-inch measurement used in the equine world. It's taken from the ground to the top of the horse's shoulder. So being under 13 hands meant they had a very low center of gravity.
Right, right. And the author notes how incredibly agile they were. He mentions they could easily beat expensive quarter horses in short, quick-turning races.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy because quarter horses are heavily muscled animals bred specifically to sprint short distances on flat ground at just incredible speeds.
Right.
But in the dense, slippery mud of the valley, the quarter horses were totally outmatched. The Molokaʻi ponies were just sure-footed enough to navigate all that chaos.
And because they were trading these ponies in such large volumes, the children were enlisted in the evaluation process.
Which is a huge responsibility.
Huge. They had to learn this highly disciplined system of physical inspection to determine, which animals were healthy, which were dangerous, and which could actually handle the work.
Right. And some of the inspection methods make immediate logical sense to me. Checking the ears, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
If a pony pins its ears flat back against its head, that is a universal sign of aggression or fear. It's warning you that it might bite or buck.
Very true.
But I have to push back a little on another method the author describes.
Oh, okay.
He talks about his grandfather acting almost like a horse whisperer, looking deeply into a horse's eye to read its entire life history, claiming he could tell if it had been abused just by staring into its pupil.
Ah, right.
Is there actual validity to that, or is this just local folklore? Because it sounds a bit magical.
Well, it sounds like romanticized folklore, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But it's actually grounded in practical behavioral science.
Really?
Yeah. A seasoned horseman isn't looking for a literal biography in the iris. They're assessing micro-expressions and neurological baselines.
Oh, wow.
So an animal that has suffered chronic abuse develops a heightened startle response. The muscles around the orbit of the eye, they hold tension differently. The way their pupils dilate in response to sudden movement or how erratically they track human proximity, all of that gives a wealth of information about their trauma and their capacity for trust.
Okay. That completely reframes it for me.
Yeah.
It's high-level behavioral observation masquerading as intuition.
Exactly.
But the most vital part of the inspection process wasn't the ears or the eyes, right? It came back to the environment again.
Always.
The ultimate test was the hooves, specifically the color.
Yeah.
They placed a premium on black hooves, actively avoiding white ones.
And this is where environmental pressure directly dictates agricultural strategy.
Yeah.
The mud surrounding the Manoa stream wasn't just wet dirt, it was stagnant and teeming with anaerobic bacteria.
Right. And the memoir explicitly notes that white hooves were highly prone to hoof rot in that environment, while the black hooves survived.
Yeah, there's a structural difference at play here. In equine biology, hooves with white coloration often possess slightly less dense keratin. They can be more porous. So when you force a porous hoof to stand in warm, bacteria-rich mud day after day, those anaerobic bacteria penetrate the hoof wall much faster.
Yikes.
Yeah, it leads to debilitating conditions like thrush or hoof rot. Black hooves generally have a denser keratin structure, so they act as a tougher physical barrier against that specific bacterial load.
Wow. So the children were actively applying evolutionary biology and veterinary triage just to keep their business running.
They had to.
But grandfather didn't stop at horses. His business acumen led him to supply the local Honolulu meat market too. Which brings us to the logistics of inter-island shipping and what has to be the most chaotic scene in the entire text.
Oh, absolutely. So grandfather started buying goats from the Big Island in massive quantities. We're talking 50 to 100 goats at a time.
That is so many goats.
It is. And to get them to Honolulu, they relied on a Young Brothers barge. Now, Young Brothers is the essential inter-island freight company. Their barges are basically giant floating flatbeds.
Right.
They're used to transport everything from heavy machinery to personal cars across the ocean.
And their containment strategy for 100 goats on an open ocean barge was aggressively optimistic.
That's a good way to put it.
They constructed a flimsy little chain-link corral right on the bow of the barge. Now, anyone who has spent time around goats knows that they do not respect boundaries.
Not at all. A chain link fence is useless against a goat because of their unique anatomy.
Really? How so?
Well, goat's hoof has a hard, sharp outer rim and a soft, pliable inner pad. So when they step on an uneven surface, that inner pad conforms to the shape. It acts almost like a suction cup.
Oh, wow.
So a chain link fence isn't a barrier to them, it's a ladder.
A ladder, of course. So predictably, complete pandemonium breaks out. The goats scale the chain link, they escape the corral, and they begin jumping roof to roof across the personal cars parked on the deck of the bars.
Oh, man.
Try to imagine standing on the dock in Honolulu waiting for your shipped car and seeing a herd of goats denting the roof. And the stakes of this escape were incredibly high. Because if the dock workers lowered the heavy metal ramp before the animals were secured, 100 wild goats would have sprinted directly into downtown Honolulu traffic.
Which would have been a disaster. And the problem-solving required in that moment fell entirely on the boys.
Yes. They literally had to scale the exterior side of the dock barge, climb up onto the deck, and start roping these runaway goats midair off the roofs of these cars.
It's incredible.
It plays like physical comedy, but they were racing against the clock to prevent a massive civic disaster.
While it's a very funny visual, the underlying reality of that scene is profound.
Yeah, I agree.
We often talk today about removing obstacles for our children, right?
Yeah.
Smoothing out the path so they can succeed. This lifestyle did the exact opposite. These children were forged by friction.
Absolutely.
They were thrust into high-stakes logistics. If an animal escaped, they had to catch it. If livestock got sick, they couldn't just call a vet and walk away.
Right. They had to stay, observe, and learn how to treat the infection for the next time. They were immersed in a daily masterclass of self-reliance.
They were deeply physically connected to the reality of their landscape.
They really were. But the memoir eventually shifts its focus from all that physical labor to the element that caused all that friction in the first place, the rain.
Right.
The constant, relentless precipitation of the valley is the catalyst for everything we've discussed today.
The rain is the architect of their world. I mean, it's what created the heavy mud, swelled the Manoa stream, and demanded such specialized livestock and labor.
Yet the way the family and the surrounding culture viewed the rain was not as an enemy.
Not at all.
The author mentions a famous traditional song, Rain Tuahine Manoa. The song describes the rain falling gently on the pili grass at Waihila. And just briefly, pili grass is a thick, native bunch grass historically used for thatching roofs. And Waihila is the prominent ridge overlooking the valley.
Understanding that song requires understanding the concept of kaona in Hawaiian poetry. Kaona refers to a hidden, layered, or deeper meaning beneath the literal words.
And the kaona of this specific song is that the rain falling on the ridge actually represents a woman weeping for her loved one.
Wow.
Yeah, those heavy emotional tears are what flow down the mountains and swell the Manoa stream. It's a stunning poetic framing of a weather event that, on a purely practical level, caused the Teves family so much physical hardship.
It elevates the physical environment into a profound spiritual landscape, and that cultural perspective sets up the emotional climax of the memoir perfectly.
It really does. We pivot from this grueling, muddy reality of barefoot ranching to a moment of deep reverence. The author's oldest grandchild is born, and when it comes time to name the baby girl, grandfather and mother understand the cultural weight of the decision.
Right, because in Hawaiian culture, a name is not just a label, it carries life history and destiny.
Exactly. So they consult their neighbor to find the right name. And their neighbor just happened to be Tutu Mary Kawena Pukuʻi.
Which is amazing. It is important to understand that Tutu Mary Kawena Pukuʻi was not just a friendly neighbor. She is one of the most towering, revered figures in Hawaiian scholarship, linguistics, and cultural preservation.
Yeah, she's a legend.
Consulting her was seeking wisdom from the deepest well of cultural knowledge available.
And the way she discovers the name is just breathtaking. Tutu looks out her window toward the western wall of the valley. She observes the thick mist, the exact same mist and rain that generates the mud, rots the hooves, and forces the boys to haul water.
Right.
She sees it completely encircling her home. And in that quiet observation, she names the baby girl Kaʻohukaukuahiwi o Mānoa.
Wow.
The translation of that name is the mist that rests on the mountaintops of Mānoa.
The duality of that moment is the core insight of this entire history, I think.
It truly is. We just spent all this time describing the valley as this treacherous, exhausting workplace. But the exact same people who fought the mud every day viewed the mist as a blessing worthy of naming their first grandchild. They didn't resent the rain for making their lives harder.
No, they recognized that they belonged to the valley. The valley did not belong to them.
That's a great way to put it.
The rain wasn't an obstacle to be conquered or paved over. It was a constant companion. They built a life that accommodated the weather, that utilized the difficult terrain, and that respected the swelling of the Mānoa stream.
Yeah.
It was a complete harmonious integration of human life and the natural environment, maintained even as the heavy pressure of urbanization was building a concrete perimeter around them.
It's beautiful. When we look back at the scope of this story, from a young boy waking up at dawn to fetch Nelly Belle out of the knee-deep mud, to the frantic roping of goats on shipping barges, to understanding the evolutionary biology of hooves, all the way to the profound naming of a child by the mountain mist, it forces us to look differently at the ground we walk on.
It leaves us with a necessary question, I think. As modern urbanization continues its march and the loss of agricultural zoning transforms our natural valleys into paved concrete grids, it isn't just open space we are losing.
Right.
We are burying these vibrant, muddy memories. We are losing the hard-won skills, the deep self-reliance, and the intimate cultural ties to the weather and the soil. We have to ask ourselves what other rich histories and vital lessons are lying dormant, quietly buried beneath the pavement of the cities we live in today.